technical seminars are an Intertech production. For instructor-led .NET, Java, and XML courses, visit us at www.intertech.com.
Thankfully now, in Visual Studio 2010, we now have it. For example, on my machine, if I just go ahead and launch this thing, Visual Studio 2010 Ultimate Edition, that's what I've got, which is beta, of course. Anybody can download this and install it. I can go ahead and choose a brand new, if I can line it up perfectly, a brand new web project. And you notice I'm in the C# on the left side here, and I can choose web, and I can choose an MVC 2 web application. See, they're releasing the version 2 of the MVC project template. The one that you can download and install in Visual Studio 2008 is version 1. So now they have version 2, which will be out in .NET 4.0. Mind you, this is still in beta. This has not been officially released. By the way, did you notice this? On the left side here, we now have F#. Yeah, that's being included with Visual Studio 2010, which is more of a scientist language as far as I've seen. It reminds me of the old Fortran language. I had that in college. I don't miss that language, but it's not a terrible language. Anyways, I'm going to go ahead and choose C#, choose MVC Application, click OK. And right away when you create a project in Studio 2008 or in Studio 2010, it always asks if you want to create a unit test project and if you want to use a particular test framework. Now mind you, if I had some of the other unit testing frameworks installed on my machine, they would show up in this list as well. Otherwise, I can just use a standard unit test framework for Visual Studio 2010. Don't take the attitude that you should always just skip adding a unit test. I mean, a lot of people encourage using test-driven development, and I do too as well. I encourage you to go ahead and create unit tests within a separate project. Anyways, you can see here that we do have the MVC application here created with controllers, with views, and models. And I'm going to talk about each one of these things. And most importantly, what the heck is going on in this global.asax file. This, of course, is where we actually register our routes. Some other things I didn't mention about Studio 2010. Dynamic data web applications are supported. You may or may not have played with dynamic data web applications. They allow you to go ahead and just take data from whatever data sources you have and display them in these awesome grids on the screen. They're very simple, and they were added to Visual Studio 2008 with Service Pack 1. You just make a small change to the global.asax, and you got a full-blown website displaying all of your data. This will also be carried forward in the Studio 2010. There was a lot added with .NET 3.5 Service Pack 1. If you just install Visual Studio 2008 with .NET 3.5, you didn't get very much. I mean, you got all of the web and Windows applications, but they added a lot with this Service Pack 1. Much more features than just new project templates, if you will, and just fixes. Stronger support for multi-threaded apps, that's for you C++ developers. Something that they are adding in Studio 2010 will be the ability to go ahead and debug multiple threads simultaneously. So you can check out to see what's going on these multiple threads. And of course, Visual Studio 2010 looks so pretty on the screen because the thing was created in WPF. Now in Beta 1 I found there was an issue with graphics performance when I'd stretch and shrink certain window sizes, but I found that it's increased dramatically with Beta 2, so I'm looking forward to working with Visual Studio 2010 when it is officially released. I'm impressed by the appearance of it. It looks just, a ton cooler than Visual Studio 2008. Even the source code itself looks nicer. It's just cleaner. Now in order to create an MVC application, we have a screenshot here of Visual Studio 2008 with this project template installed. You'll notice you can see that MVC web application is the project type that's being chosen here on my machine. Also notice to the right of it that dynamic data entities web project, those two different project templates for dynamic data, those are something that were also introduced with that Service Pack 1. Choose your language and choose your project name, and yes, choose your test framework. What type of test project are you going to be creating? Note that last bullet point there where it talks about it also supports alternative testing frameworks such as NUnit and MBUnit. Some developers prefer to use NUnit or MBUnit because they want a finer grain of control for their testing framework. Unit testing, as I said, is about testing every single method and property in every one of your classes. And it does not matter if, the accessibility of those members of those classes. You should not only be testing the public methods and the public properties, but if you have friend or I should say internal methods or private methods, a lot of these unit testing frameworks can circumvent those security levels for the accessibility to have full testing of all of those members. Thankfully, unit testing was dropped from, it used to be at the almighty Team Test Edition and Team Suite and Team Developer. Well, finally they brought it down to the professional level of Visual Studio 2008. So if you have VS 2008 Pro, you've got unit testing. So now we have it at this level instead of only of the Team Editions, which are, much more in cost, to be honest. So that's probably one of the reasons that these other unit testing frameworks have taken off in popularity. A lot of companies don't bother with any of the Team Editions of Visual Studio. They just work with Professional, and they make up for that shortcoming. They make up for that lack of tools that are available in the Team Editions only by using these other third-party frameworks, which are oftentimes free and completely open source. Now, when you actually officially create the project, you're going to notice a couple of important DLLs. In the references here, I've got system.web.mvc. That's one of the DLLs I'm referencing. I'm also referencing system.web.routing. Now, the MVC DLL is installed into the GAC when you install the MVC project template on your machine. Or, of course, it's going to be part of .NET 4.0 when that's officially released in March. Likewise, the routing DLL, well, that one's installed when you install Service Pack 1 for Visual Studio. Okay, that gives us the ability to go ahead and route the requests that are come along on a query string to certain web page views. Now, expanding each of the folders within your MVC web application project, you'll notice there's a folder called Controllers. The Controllers folder must be called Controllers, and you have classes that are named with the controller suffix. Also, the name of the files, of course, must also end with that controller suffix. This is a requirement, right? This is a requirement for ASP.NET MVC. Every controller must end in the name controller. Also, each controller has a dedicated folder with the same name that contains all the various views that are used with that particular controller. So, for example, you can see up at the top there we have one called Home Controller. Down below, in the Views folder, we have a Home folder, and inside of that are the different types of views that can be used with that particular controller. Now, each view, this is important, each view maps to an action in the controller class, or I should say, basically a public method. You see, the controller class can have any number of public methods, and they can be called directly through the query string. And that's all done through the routing.
For more free learning resources and to see the latest lineup of our instructor-led .NET, Java, and XML courses, visit us at www.intertech.com.